Welcome back, everyone, to Don't Let That White Coat Fool You. I'm Dr. Norma Mobley, along with Dr. Prasharon Dixon and Lamont McIntosh, our financial expert. I hope you've been enjoying all the information he's been sharing with us. And I also, speaking of sharing, hope you've been sharing it with your friends and colleagues because he has really given us a lot to think about in regard to our financial wellness. So let's recap where we were when we were last together.
Yeah, it was so good. We had to continue it, right? And
Yes.
so, really just the engagement that was good because you asked some really, really good questions. And we talked about what career stages and how should strategize for those medical professionals, right? And we got a lot to the attending and the residencies, but we didn't get to, when you're actually practicing or nearing retirement, in the practice as well. And so we talked about savings being the foundation. All right. Don't worry if you can't invest right now, especially in the beginning if you're an attending or a resident. Let's just make sure that you get some really fundamental skills on budgeting, cash flow, things of that nature. Living in humble means, right? Humility,
Right.
needs to be big in that part of your stage because you've already sacrificing on the lack of sleep and all the tests and exam. Use that same discipline with your finances, knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel from a financial perspective. And then we got a little bit into some different terminology in regards to the type of accounts and investments and retirement accounts and strategies from that regard. And I'd like to bring it full circle, right, to talk about the end of the road. So in my profession,
Can
we
we
talked about,
pause?
yep. And so we talked about the different investment types and strategies that can be taken advantage of at various parts of the career, but we hadn't really talked about what it's like to get to the end of the road, right? To bring it full circle in regards to you've been practicing for a while, you've made your mistakes, you've done some great things as well, you've built a brand, and now you're looking to ride off in the sunset in retirement and do so in a healthy way. And so with that being said, I just really want to continue to emphasize that P word, planning. All of this has to go with the plan. If we're wandering out here aimlessly, then we're never going to get to our destination, right? So I tell people there's a difference between a hustle and running a business. Both of them can get you to where you need to go, but it's much more efficient to run a business. And so with that being said, for my practicing, doctors like yourself and Dr. Dixon, we want to emphasize like, all right, we got to identify quantifiable goals. What does retirement look like you from an income standpoint, right? So when? What type of lifestyle do you want to live, right? All those things have to be quantifiable.
Okay.
How does that mix with other resources that you may have? If you're married, your spouse's income, right? If you have access to a pension, how does that fixed income come into play? And I'll give you real life example, just a quick one. Let's say you have a $15,000 a month retirement income goal, right? And you're going to get, maybe 4 or 5,000 from Social Security because you're going to retire at Social Security age, right? You have no other pension. Let's say you don't have a federal pension like some of my CDC clients have. Then that's a big gap, right? It's like, we got to make up $10,000 a month essentially to be able to live the lifestyle that you want. Now that might be big to some people, but we don't. If you've saved over the years adequately, even if you had to come up and down, we can easily reverse engineer those numbers. You may need $4 million in the bank at that point to be able to produce said income. And then we can look at what tools bridge that gap. So that's why it's important to have a goal. Sometimes when clients give me that number, sometimes it's a reality. It becomes a situation where it's a reality check for most people. They think that they're going to have a certain amount of money in retirement, and then we have to adjust. And that's okay. Because a lot of times the difference between living off $15,000 a month and 12 per se, right, or 11, I mean, you probably don't have to change too dramatically. But if you need that to sustain your lifestyle, then that's a different conversation to have. So identifying quantifiable numbers allows us to be able to have a real discussion like, hey, we either got to save really aggressive, invest, work a little bit longer, or adjust our numbers. And so having a plan is that, right? But on the positive side, if you've built a brand, you've built a name in the community, we talked about a little bit before, you might have a sellable, scalable practice. And there's a lot of people that are purchasing practices that are already generating revenue, and that can be your retirement plan as well. For my employee side, doctors, that's a little bit different because you don't have, quote unquote, a tangible asset that can be sold. So we have to plan differently for those types of individuals. So it really boils down to what is it that you want, how we're going to get there, and are you willing to do what it takes to get there?
Okay. So, one of the things I didn't know about when I first started my practice, I had never heard the term business equity.
Yep.
That was something that I learned about when I decided I was going to merge my practice.
Sure.
So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so equity in business typically is some again agreed upon term, between you and said partner, or you can get what they call valuations done by accounting practices and places firms that do that, and they'll usually consider is how long you've been in business. They'll look at your profit and losses statements and your revenue statements from years past, and they look at your clients like that you've been able to retain and for how long, and then they'll do a calculation to say, well, this business is worth X, and at that point, if you're in your situation where you're partnering with someone, then their business is worth something, and you combine them, then that business is worth that combined number, and so based on proportionate, you know what I'm saying. I guess what you bring to the table, then you and your partner can establish that. Let's say, for instance, combined the practice is worth 10 million, but your practice was worth 3 million, and theirs was worth 7. So now you have 30% of equity. You know what I'm saying, in the company based on the valuation. Obviously, net equity is what we really need to be talking about. Net equity is meaning what the business is worth, what it could be sold for in the fair market, minus what you owe, what the business owes. So if you have, 5 million in debt and the business is worth 10 million, then you have 5 million in equity.
When would be a good time in your career to start diversifying your investments?
Yeah. Well, I think in the beginning you should diversify your investments, but honestly, what really dictates your ability to invest and how you invest is whatever that discretionary income or revenue is. And so I use the word income for my individual doctors who are, working the W-2 route, and I say revenue for my people that are running their practices. Okay, and so as that number gets bigger, or you have more discretionary income revenue, then you have the opportunity to take advantage of different types of investments. So, for instance, if I always implore and strongly encourage to my clients, no matter what track they're running on, to take advantage of the traditional options available to you first. So if you have a 401k, are you contributing to the max, right? Or excuse me, to the match. Let me be specific. Now, it may make sense to contribute to the max, and let me explain what that means really, really quickly. The max is what the federal government, the IRS, allows you to put in. That's, that varies based on your age and everything else. But the match is whatever the company that you're working for, who is the sponsor of the plan, is willing to contribute to match what you contribute. That's the difference, right? So it may make sense to do either, but we call it free dollars in my business. If somebody's gonna give me $1 every time I put in $1, why wouldn't you
Why
put in
not
$1?
take it? That's right.
That's 100% return. Ain't no investment on earth better than that right now. You know what I'm saying? From day one. So with that being said, take advantage of those things. Then from there, maybe maxing out our IRA contributions, right? So this year, people under the age of 50, that's $7,500. If you're 50 and over, they give you a catch-up provision where you can add a little more, max those out. And then from there, okay, now you've done some of the traditional things that you've knocked out. Now let's look at maybe some alternative investments. Maybe there's an opportunity to invest in real estate. Maybe there's an opportunity to look at buying a smaller practice, right? There's so many different things you can think of. It's really contingent on what the budget allows.
So, as we end this financial series, I think
Well,
my take home message is
let me ask one little question before you
okay, go
end,
ahead, go
because
ahead.
I'm over here thinking about stuff. So I've met up with a lot of my friends who feel like they need to find a side hustle. Like it's not over. We all thought that just being a physician was going to be enough, and now it seems like we need to do more, or there are maybe just opportunities to do more to have a little extra coming in that could take care of the whatever the new plan is, vacations or your children's weddings, things that we weren't we're looking to plans that you may have now, like your children are grown, so you want to plan for the weddings and there are grandchildren coming, you
Yeah.
want to plan for their 529 plan. All of those things you're just not thinking about when you're 30. But
Right.
now we're on this end, and we really want the next generations in our families to do better than us.
Right.
So trying to make sure that the money is not just there for me to live, like what should I be doing to make sure that it's generational?
That's a great question. And I have that conversation with a lot of my clients and prospective clients is that, again, it's always going to be dictated by the budget, right? So I can build a phenomenal comprehensive financial plan for people, but if we don't have the money to fund it, then it's just pretty on paper. So the biggest thing, as we talked about in previous series, is that we have to diagnose and we have to see. We have to really, really dive deep into the budget and what's available to you, and then from there we can prioritize, right, based on that plan. Say, hey, all right, I only have enough money to do the first three of these 10 objectives. We start with those three, and hopefully, once you see it on paper, it motivates you to get in position to be able to fund all 10. And so, having those real practical conversations on the foundation is imperative.
Okay, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, this was so wonderful, Norma and Lamont. I just can express just listening to it and trying to absorb it all. I know that our crew that watches us all the time, they're going to get so much from this, and it'll be something we can listen to over and over again. So thank you so much for your time today.
Now, thank you for the
Yes.
platform. Yeah.
Yes. So, our take home message is get your financial planner early. Make sure you have that entrusted individual when you're hanging your shingle or hanging up your stethoscope at the beginning or the end. It's never too late.
Never too early either.